one thing that brought a smile to my face, Al, is the fact that Beaux Collins sat down and the first question he was asked is, "Are you finally 100% healthy?" And he said, "Yes, sir. I am 100% healthy. I'm ready to go after it." How big is that? I mean, to me, that puts a smile on my face because to me, that is very huge. Now, Al, I found this stat out here. Beaux Collins led the team in touchdowns. He had 5 receiving touchdowns last year, but he didn't play a ton. Especially towards the end of the season, he was,
Yep.
and as he mentioned, he's been dealing with injuries since day one coming on campus.
Mhm.
So this is literally the first year where he has said, legit, I'm 100%.
Mhm.
So given that we have a small sample size, and he has shown that he can produce touchdowns, team leading touchdowns, and now albeit in a situation where they weren't doing very well.
Sure.
Let's put that out there. We got to be fair, right?
Yep.
But how excited are you to know that this Beaux Collins guy, this number one wide receiver guy, is actually 100% healthy?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the biggest keys for Clemson this whole season. And it's not just in the wide receiver room; that's in several positions. Is health is going to matter in a big way. And before we ever get to a question about, hey, what are you looking for in camp? That's what I'm looking for everybody to stay healthy. Beaux Collins in particular, the wide receiver room is one of the biggest question marks. They've been challenged these last couple of years, and it hasn't gone well for Clemson. And Clemson's not used to that. We've been dominating a wide receiver for quite some time, and we're trying to get back to wide receiver Beaux Collins, I think Antonio Williams, Adam Randall, they're all going to be a big part of that. Can they be a big part of that? And a lot of that is health. We've seen a healthy Beaux Collins as a freshman. He had several connections with DJ. He had a propensity to get open. I remember he led off a few games, where he'd get kind of separation on the back end, and DJ, believe it or not, would hit him with a touchdown pass, a long touchdown pass or something like that. So he's got the ability. I think in his freshman campaign, I think he had a little bit of an issue with drops at times. But I mean, that's to be expected from a freshman. Antonio Williams kind of had the same thing at the end of the year last year. So that's freshman mistakes. He's older. I know he's been putting in a ton of work, and he's going to be. It's funny enough. I actually ran into him. I took the youth group last night to formally spill the beans in Clemson. He was in line behind us, and he just looks good. He looks the part. And so hopefully these guys are going to be able to produce and get Clemson back to at least close to what we anticipate and what we expect at wide receiver university. We got to get back there because we're not there right now. Plain and simple. I think right now that title's got to go to Ohio State or somebody like that. But we'd like to get back there. These guys are going to have to lead the charge, and Beaux Collins is going to be a big part of that.
Now, Beaux mentioned himself that he was dealing with a foot injury at one time. He was dealing with some, I don't know, hip injury, wrist, shoulder on one side, shoulder on the other side. He's been going through top to bottom issues. Kind of feels like me now at 36. I posted about how, man, every day I wake up and something else is going wrong. 2 days ago, Al, my right big toe was like aching to where I needed to pop it. I felt like I needed to pop it, and I just could not pop my toe. I don't know if you've ever had that scenario, but I just felt like I would tell you that. Well, today, Al, I'm walking down the stairs, and my left knee is cracking like a box of rocks or something. It's like it's crackling and stuff, and I'm like, you got to be
Pop rocks.
kidding me, Al. If it's not one thing, it's the other.
Sure.
So, I don't know what I'm going to do, but it's nice to see Beaux Collins finally say he's 100%. And that's what Dabo Swinney also talks about is, hey, you can go 2 ways. You can check out, or you can use it and let it defeat you. Or you can, what does it say? Grind you up or shine you up, right? This world will grind you up or shine you up. Same thing with injuries. Like you can let it strengthen you and become a better player, and you can fight through it. And Al, it's got to be tough, man. This guy's from California, away from his family, and then he gets injured. He wants to make it to the NFL. He says he's going to make it to the NFL. But I feel like that he, at least from the way he's talking, he's used his injury and his lack of playing time and his struggles to help strengthen his determination to have a great 2023. And couple that with Garrett Riley, I think it's going to be big. Now, here's the thing, Al. I wanted to ask you this question. So I went and looked at Texas Christian's percentage of receptions for total yards, right? So, do you expect when you look at Beaux Collins, all right,
Mhm.
as far as wide receiver receiving yards, all right, let's say that he was on TCU's team last year and he performed as well as TCU's team last year. So let's say Garrett Riley does the exact same that he did with TCU at Clemson this year. Do you think Beaux Collins will be the number one wide receiver as far as receiving yards, or the number two, or maybe even the number three? What do you think?
That is a great question. I tend to think that he is probably going to be number one, and that's something I might not have said several weeks ago. Hearing all the positive reviews about Beaux Collins, I still think if Clemson wants to be the Clemson of old, I think Adam Randall's got to become the alpha. And that doesn't necessarily mean he's getting the most yards. I'm just talking about jump ball threat, that type of thing. Antonio Williams, I think you got to think off the cuff that he gets the most receptions, but a lot of those you'd have to assume are underneath. I think Beaux Collins is going to, be kind of more the receiver of those mid-range passes and those deep passes. I think he's going to have the best combination of receptions and yards per catch that would probably put him over the line as far as having the most receiving yards.
So if he's wide receiver number one, well, wide receiver number one for TCU last year, 1,069 yards and 6 touchdowns.
Hmm.
So you'll finally be back to a scenario where your number one wide receiver is over 1,000 yards. To me, is that not goal number one? I mean, getting back to that scenario where you're having at least one wide receiver get 1,000 yards. And then, Clemson got to a point, Big Al, where they were getting close to having two. I think Higgins and Ross got very close to having two.
Yeah, yeah, they did for sure. And now, in fairness, those receivers, at least from what we had seen, were on a different level. There was a lot of deep jump ball situations, and they proved they could make those plays. So that's what we did, and a lot of those plays were long. And so we're going to have to wait and see if that's what happens with this receiver group. And look, you got Garrett Riley, who I think is going to spread the ball around, and that includes to the tight ends as well. So I think it's going to be difficult to get 1,000-yard receiver. Not to say it can't happen, but especially when you've got two running backs like Shipley and Maffa. I think 1,000-yard receiver is going to be a difficult thing to do. Now, if you get it, that's a great sign that Clemson's doing really well. But my expectation would be maybe one, if not two, close to 1,000. But I don't think we get one over 1,000.
That's interesting take. I'd like to see what you have to say. Put it in the comments and let us know what you think. Is it possible for Clemson to get 1,000-yard receiver this year, or is it just not possible? Not because they don't have the firepower, not because they don't have the talent, but maybe because they have too many people to spread it around to. I'm curious to see what you think in the comments there.